Greetings from Cheshire. This is Brother Gustavo. I want to send special greetings to all of you, the soldiers of Mary. Very glad for the invitation that Juan did to me to speak to you today. Just basically, I just want to share with you my vocation story, which is really, it is a beautiful story because it's a story of love. Everyone has their own story of love, of encountering with Christ, and mine, it is special because it's special for me because it's my story and how God called me. I was born in Mexico, in Guadalajara, and I am the second son of 3 children. I have 2 sisters, one older and one younger, and I was raised in a Catholic environment. Mass every Sunday, night prayers at night with my mom. She will come to her room and pray with us, and very normal and happy childhood. I grew up playing a lot. Everyone used to say that's how everyone would call me because with everyone, very joyful childhood. I have many. We used to get together every weekend. It's an important part of my family. Was always very with and all those things kind of were the seed that was planted from the very beginning from God in my heart. And as I grew up, I love sports, and I just remember playing soccer since almost I started walking. So sports were also a very important part of my life. Basically I would go to school, and then after school I would be playing all afternoon soccer. So I started training, and my life was sports. Soccer was everything in my life, and that was all the way until middle school, where I started playing for a club in Mexico, Atlas, and that was a great time for me because I really loved it. And back then I remember that I wanted to be a professional soccer player, but I also wanted to be an actor. I also wanted to be a firefighter or policeman, everything. My mom used to say that I should become an actor because I could do everything I wanted, because I was never sure of what really I was called to do. But there was something that I was always very sure, and that was that I wanted to be happy. And so with this idea kind of in my heart, I started a quest or search for happiness in my life. And as you start growing up, certain things start to interest you that before weren't there. All of a sudden sports start being less important than my social life, my friends. I started going out a lot, and I love parties, and I will be in parties every single weekend since I started high school. And things started going wrong when I started high school because this search for happiness, I kind of started looking in the wrong places. My mind, happiness was to have absolutely everything you want. Money, fame, pleasure, just like all superficial things. That was in my mind. I was like, you want to be happy? You have to have things. You have to have a big house. You have to have a nice car. You have to be known. People have to respect you. And I kind of made a very utilitarian way of thinking. People around me were there to satisfy myself, and everything was about me. So all of a sudden, the center of happiness, it became myself during high school. And indeed, I started going out, and I started doing all these things that I thought would bring me happiness. And as I was growing, the level of parties was also growing, and then alcohol, and then girlfriends, and all of a sudden I start realizing that, well, all those things that promised me to make me happy weren't really making me happy. I remember these long nights. I call them the 3 a.m. crisis. And that was when I would come back after a party, like 3 a.m. in the morning, half drunk, and I will find with myself. And all of a sudden, the lights went off, the party is over, and there's nobody around me to pretend, and I'm completely with myself. And so this question will appear, would like present to my heart and to my mind. Are you really happy? Are you really satisfied with this lifestyle? How long is it going to last? Because, in my mind I knew that one day I would have to work. I would have to have a family, and all that fun and pleasures and satisfaction would be over. And so I was afraid. I was afraid to know that one day that would be over. And so I just remember these long nights really thinking and sometimes crying. I would put music in the back and I would just light my cigarette. And I would just smoke and think for hours, just thinking about life. What's the meaning of life? What am I called to do in this life? And at the same time, I would see some of my friends, doing the same thing over and over and over. And I would just ask myself, like, can they really be happy by doing this? You see many times that accidents happened, and maybe one of your friend might have died because of an car accident, and I would wonder these things back then. What if I were to die tonight? And I would get terrified at the idea that I would not be ready to die, that I would not be ready to face God, and He was going to ask me, well, what did you do for me? And what was I going to answer? I haven't done anything for you, none for others. Everything is about myself. And so I started wondering, what should I do? Obviously, by this time, I was not going to Mass on Sundays. The church was way away from me, and I didn't want to have anything to do with the church. And so I started wondering, what should I do? And things started getting really bad in my family. There was constant fights because obviously they want the best for me, and they were worried about my lifestyle. And so I had a lot of problems with my dad, with my mom, and there was a point where things got really, really bad. And I remember one day coming back to my house, and it was after a long party, so you can imagine how it was. And my mom opened the door, and she said, "It is enough. We're gonna give you 2 options, because this thing cannot be like that. We're gonna give you 2 options. Number 1, you go this Holy Week to a mission trip with the Legionaries of Christ. Or number 2, we're gonna kick you out of the house, because things are getting really bad, and it's not fair for anybody. You're making us all suffer. So you can decide. If you don't want to go to the missions, it's fine, but you're not coming back to this house, and we're going to stop paying your studies and everything." So you can imagine that it was a very tough decision. I have to cancel a trip to the beach with my friends during Holy Week. But at the end I decided to say, well, I really don't have many options, so I went to this trip. And honestly, I have to say that trip changed my life forever. Because for the first time I realized that true joy and true happiness was not in using people for my pleasure, but it was in giving myself to others. I never experienced that before. Never, because everything, like if I have a friend, it was because I like him, because he makes me happy. If I would have a girlfriend, the same thing. If before you were going to ask me, like, what are your criteria to choose a girlfriend? That's because it's beautiful, because everybody can see that is my girlfriend. And it was all about me. And for the first time, I get to know people that were in need, that were poor, and yet they were richer than I was. Because they didn't have anything of all those things that I thought would make me happy. It was very poor people in this town, and yet they didn't need anything. They were completely satisfied and fulfilled with what they have because they have God, and that was a new thing for me. How can it be possible? And so that changed completely my mind, and for the first time I realized that by giving myself, I will find that joy that I was striving for many, many years. And so it was a moment for decision. What do I want to do from now on? Now that you know that true happiness consists in giving yourself, what do you want to do? And obviously, but this time there is still nothing. I'm not talking about the priesthood at all. It was just a decision of life changing. What do you want to do for now? What do you want to do from now on? And so I thought that things couldn't keep going the way they were, so I promised that I was going to change. I came back, I started college, and my fervor lasted for about 3 weeks. 3 weeks I prayed the rosary, 3 weeks I went to Mass, and after that it was just so hard. Because my friends were the same, the parties were the same, and I was very attracted to that. So I started college and it was the same thing basically. Party over party. But this time, the crises were worse than before. Because now, I knew what really made me happy. And I was not doing it. So after a year, out of the blue, I received a call right before Holy Week. I was already in college. And this legionary called me. He didn't call for the entire year. And out of the blue, 2 weeks before the missions, he called me. He was like, hey, would you like to come to missions? I was like, what? You didn't call me for a whole year and you're just calling me right now before my Holy Week, which I was already planning to do something with my friends. And he's there, like the voice of God, telling me, remember what you really want, you really need to do. It's like, oh, gosh. And so I told him, listen, that sounds really exciting. Let me think about it. And as soon as I hung up with him, I kind of saved his name, like Danger. And I saved it so that I wouldn't answer him again. And the next day he started calling me again, but I wouldn't answer, and calling and calling and calling, and I wouldn't answer. And so after 2 days, I received a phone call for a random number. And so I picked up and it was him. I was like, oh gosh, stop it. And it was him like, hey, why do you want to answer? I'm trying to invite you and you really should do this. And I was like, okay, enough of this. Why don't you call my cousin? I asked him, if you call my cousin and you convince him to go, I go too. And I thought it was going to be hard for him to do that. So he called my cousin, and sure enough, he convinced him, and he called me like an hour later. He said, hey, your cousin says it's fine. I was like, what? So anyway, I went to missions again, and this time was just amazing. It was just an incredible experience. Again, I felt that fulfillment of self-giving, of just the joy of give yourself to others. And at this time I said, from now on, I really need to do something because I cannot be waiting for a week every year to be really who I want to be and to be happy and to give myself and then just be miserable for the rest of the year. And so I took a decision and I said, well, if I really want to live this, I have to make a change in my life. And so I started a year as a missionary. So I decided to offer a whole year of my life at the service of Christ. With the Legionaries of Christ, they have a program for lay people, lay guys in college, that they want to do something for others. And so that's what I did. And I went for a year to Mexico City, living with a religious community with Legionaries. And that's where really the call to the priesthood started. Up until, I never ever thought of the priesthood until I was 19 years old. Never ever even occurred to me that it could be a possibility in my life until this year. And it was funny because it happened at the same time that it was also growing a relationship with a girl that I met there. Probably the most incredible woman I ever met. She was also a missionary there, and we both were giving a year to Christ, and we were working together in the same city. And so I kind of started growing this love for her during this year. But at the same time, it was growing my love for others, and for the mission, and for this desire of spending my life for others. And so I kept working, and she was working with me, and it was beautiful because we were both working for Christ and giving our life to Him. And so I have to say that I completely fell in love with her, and she was amazing. She was a great girl, and she told me, listen, if we are going to start dating, number one, we have to have permission from the superiors or the persons in charge. And number two, the first thing we need to focus on right now and this year is to give Christ to others. Because this year is for others, not for ourselves. So if we're gonna do those things, then we can start dating. And I was like, okay. The second part I understand it, but the first part, how I'm gonna get permission? Like, nobody ever has gotten permission to date with another missionary during the same year. Something that it just doesn't happen. But I went to talk to the father in charge, and I just kind of explained the whole situation and how like this relationship kind of started happening and whatever. And sure enough, I got permission, and I went back to her and was like, oh, we have the permission now. And she couldn't believe like this was happening. And so in the end, we started dating. And so it was from the moment I started dating with her that the call to the priesthood really started like growing in me. So it was funny because it was a parallel, like both loves were growing at the same time. And I think it kind of makes sense because never before that I experienced what it was really to love somebody. You know, sure, I was surrounded by friends and girls, and I had many girlfriends before, but I was never willing to sacrifice myself for the joy of others. You know, like, girls were there, yeah, sure, but they were because they make me happy. You know, before, any girlfriend that I would have, it was because she made me happy. But now it was different, because with her, it was I who wanted to make her happy. And I could be willing to do everything for her, no matter what it was. She would ask me to do anything, and I would be willing to do it, to sacrifice anything for her. And so, and I guess that's pretty close to what the priesthood is about. You know, it is really to sacrifice yourself for the good of others. So the more I will love her, and the more I will give myself to her, it will also increase my love and desire to do that for everybody around me. So I will grow in love for her, but I will also grow in love for God. And I will also grow in love for the mission. So that happened for a few months. And at the same time in my prayer, I was just feeling this desire of more self-giving and more self-giving. And I would just hear the voice of God telling me, like, you have to love me more and give yourself more. I was like, okay, and I will try harder in the mission and everything. And it was until after 3 months or 4 months of being with her, and after a week of spiritual exercises, that the voice of God was clearer and clearer, and He was asking me to give entirely myself to Him. And so I started kind of get angry with God because for the first time I had absolutely everything I thought it was necessary to be happy. And now it was for real. I was giving my life to Christ. I had the perfect girlfriend because she was incredible. I was already, I changed my college so that we can both stay in Mexico City to study there. And it was almost like the perfect dream. You know, I had college, beautiful girlfriend, everything I needed, good friends, and most of all a friendship with Christ. And yet it was not enough. I still felt like my glass was still not completely full of water. You know, that it was still space for more. And I didn't like that. So I started to struggle with God, and why? Why do you want me to give more if I have given you everything? I'm here for you. I've already given you a year. Why do you want more? And he was like, and in my prayer, I just felt that he wanted more and more and more. So I couldn't any longer. And so I remember one day I was praying in the chapel after being with her for a whole day. It was an amazing day. I left her in her house and I went to the chapel and I was doing my night prayers and I would just start crying. And I asked God, I said, Lord, why did you even bring me here? Why did you present her to me? Why did you make everything the way it is right now? If then you were going to take it away from me. It just doesn't make sense. If you wanted me to be priest, why you didn't call me from the very beginning? It would have been way easier. And I was just arguing. And I wanted to have an answer. You know, I was not going to leave the chapel until he would give me an answer. And so crying for a long time, I just say, okay, listen. And that was the first time I said yes to his call. I said, listen, if you want me to be priest, I will do it. But I will not do anything to end up my relationship with my girlfriend because you give it to me. So if you want me to be priest, you take care of it. And I left the chapel with a lot of peace. And a few weeks later, out of the blue, I don't know what happened, my girlfriend called me and she said that she wants to break up with me. And like everything was perfect. And yet, she just said like, oh, you know, I think it is, I just felt that it's not the time for us to keep dating. I think we should wait till the end of our year so that we make sure that we're actually giving ourselves totally to Christ. And if he wants us to be together, he will do everything necessary. So at the end of the year, we can just keep dating. But now I feel that it is just time for us to focus on our mission. And I was like, what? I can't believe it. And I was so mad at God, like, because he did it again to me. And so I went praying again. And I said, fine. I was again crying because I wasn't happy with this whole deal of being a priest. And I said, fine, listen. I'm going to say yes totally and forever. And I'm going to go to this program to become your priest or whatever you want me to be. It's fine. But just tell me why. Why did you present her to me? Why did you bring me here? Why did you do all this if you were going to take it away from me? And then I clearly heard a voice that from that moment on has been really present in my vocation. He said, because you needed to know how to love and give yourself completely to a person that you can see, feel, so that you will give yourself entirely to me, whom you're never going to see. And so I just start crying because it totally makes sense. You know, I never loved anybody before. And so for the first time, I experienced that true sacrificial love of giving yourself completely to somebody. And that's what really the priesthood is about. Giving yourself completely to a person, to a real person, to Jesus Christ. And so after that, I just said yes. I went. I joined the Legionaries of Christ. And honestly, it's been a beautiful, beautiful journey since then on. I can say that I'm completely, truly fulfilled in my life. And that I completely find joy in giving myself to others. And when God calls you, he never asks you to stop loving what you have before. You know, it is a misunderstanding to believe that Jesus wants you not to love your family anymore. Or in this case, not to love my girlfriend anymore. I don't think so. And to be honest, I never stopped loving her. It was precisely because I love her that I gave myself for her. And right now I can think back on that decision, and I never stopped loving her. I never stopped loving my family. But rather, I love them even more now, because I know that I'm giving my life for them. And I'm giving myself to God for them. And that's the sacrificial love that a priest has to give. That's the sacrifice. You know, it's a sacrifice of love. So God never asks you to stop loving others so that you can love him. But he wants you to love others in the same love which you love him. And that's been my experience. And I can truly say that I have been really blessed by this call. And nobody has more joy than the one who lays down his life for his friends. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and be sure of my prayers. Greetings from Cheshire.